So, with rumours and leaks everywhere, I am very much hyped about TBC Classic and I'm sure you guys are too. That being said, one thing that really is mitigating my excitement is how little we still actually know at this point. There's lots of leaks and lots of rumours and heavy suggestions of certain things that we might be able to expect. However, we don't really know anything concrete. One thing that's really got me concerned is going to be how TBC Classic comes about. And that's why I thought in this video I would discuss the different ways that Blizzard have suggested that they might be delivering TBC Classic, and the pros and cons of every which way that they could potentially be delivering it. I'm going to be using the survey from last year that they discussed how we would like TBC released for each of the given options, going through them one by one and giving my views on the pros and cons of delivering TBC Classic in that way. So let's dive into it. So, for anyone not familiar with the survey I'm referring to, I'll pop it up on the screen for you now. But basically, this is a survey that was looking at the different ways that TBC could be released and trying to get the feedback of the player base in order to understand what they most wanted from this release and what they didn't want to see as well. Now, the four options on this survey that we're going to be looking at in this video were essentially to have the current Classic servers turn into Burning Crusade servers, with the option to transfer your character off of the server and back onto a server that will remain Classic forever. Another option that was very similar in that you would continue with your current character on a new Burning Crusade server that you could transfer to, otherwise it would remain on its current Classic server forever. Or to start a brand new character on a new Burning Crusade server. This option was split into two, one of which was going to be starting your characters at level 1, and the other starting with a level 58 template character to begin with. Now, the first one of these that we are going to discuss is going to be option 1, to continue to play your current Classic character on your existing server as it progresses to the Burning Crusade expansion, with the option to transfer to a Classic server that will never progress past level 60. Now, the pros of this are obvious. You get to keep your current character, all the progression that you've made, and not feel as though you're just dropping it off to the side, Classic's done, and moving on to the next shiny new thing. This is going to be the way that most people are going to just sort of expect delivery of this particular expansion, as well as also the fact that it does most commonly resemble what happened in the actual lifespan of the retail version of the game. Of course, all of the Classic servers simply became TBC servers when TBC came out because, well, that's what there was at the time. The downside of this, however, is pretty numerous as well. The most notable, of course, is going to be that this is going to dilute the community of the Classic servers when TBC comes out. Now, this is going to be a bit of a mixed bag and certainly a controversial opinion, but what a lot of people seem to not realise is that however TBC comes about, there is going to be a dilution of the community of TBC, of the current Classic version of the game. This is of course because there is going to be many people who want to stay with Classic forever. They fought for it for 15 years, they finally got it, and they don't want to see it go away again. However, these guys are going to be in the same raid as people who are very excited for TBC's release. For example, I'm not much of a raider, but I am in a guild with people who are die-hard Classic and will never stop playing it. And personally, I always saw Classic as something I was going to enjoy and it's great fun, but really for me it was a stepping stone and I was hoping it was successful so that they would bring out TBC and Wrath servers, most notably TBC. As a result, when my TBC server availability pops up, my guild are going to be losing me as a member, or at least having me become inactive. This is going to split most guilds just the same. I am not in a one-off unique circumstance, because people are going to feel differently about these things. Now, one thing that people may not realise about this particular delivery method, with the current server being turned into a Burning Crusade server and the option to transfer off to a new Classic server, it gives the ability for the Classic servers to be able to be brought together, much the same way that sort of Connected Realms work, with low-level realms on retail, to develop a new community. That's probably going to be the very best option, simply because of the fact that if you have these many broken communities of what's left of scraps of servers of Classic, then of course you are going to find yourself with a very dried up scene, a stale auction house, and not many people wanting to really play. If you put a lot of these scraps together, you might end up with a new community. Of course, it sucks that you're going to end up with a new community, but that problem is going to be unavoidable. It's better to start afresh with a single new community, in my opinion, on that new classic server, than have yourself be in the remnants of a bygone era server that does not have any community left whatsoever. To this end, our next option is going to be the continue playing my current classic character on my existing server that will never progress past level 60 with the option to transfer to a Burning Crusade server. So this is obviously very similar, the key difference being that the servers will not be the same way around, i.e. the servers that are classic currently will be remaining classic and you will transfer off to a new Burning Crusade server, whereas previously those servers would become TBC and you could classic transfer off. Now, the big difference here for me is basically just boils down to how much of the community they think is going to split. Of course, if you are having, let's say, 10% of the classic community want to go and play TBC, you'd be better off with a new TBC server that people could transfer to. If you're going to only have 10% staying on Classic with everybody else moving to TBC, you would of course be better off having the server transfer into a TBC server and then move off onto Classic if that is your preference. This is one of the parts of the sort of decision-making process that I really don't envy Blizzard, because they essentially have to try and predict whereabouts that needle is going to fall in terms of what the distribution is going to be like, as well as, of course, trying to figure out how many people are going to want to play both. This is going to be quite a big issue for Blizzard to try and figure out, and if they are going to go down this route and attempt to make the right decision. To that end, I am actually quite curious how people do feel about this, because I personally have been asking people as I've been playing Classic what their plans are when TBC release, and I get a very mixed bag of results. So do let me know down in the comments below whether you are going to be playing Classic when TBC comes out, playing TBC, maybe you're going back to retail, or maybe you're going to try and get some sort of mixture of all three. Do let me know, because it is something that I am very curious about. But moving on. Our next option is going to be to start a brand new character from level 1 on a new Burning Crusade server. Right, so this is the option that actually has quite a large following, and I can see why. There are some very notable pros. Most obvious is going to be the fact that it isn't going to necessarily affect the servers already in place of Classic, other than the fact that the player base will be moving off of them. This is going to lead also to the fresh server experience, which is something that a lot of people from private servers have really enjoyed over the years. It does have its pros and cons, most notably going to be that it isn't how TBC was experienced first time around, but those classic fresh server experiences are something that is incredibly popular with the majority of the player base. It does also have the massive pro of mitigating how much people can prepare for TBC's release in advance. I know a lot of people are extremely worried that there are players going into TBC Classic with potentially tens if not hundreds of thousands of gold saved up, as well as stockpiles of enough items to see them the entire length of TBC. That is going to be a massive issue, and it's one that is essentially unavoidable, because of course you can't really mitigate what people take with them, because if you mitigate, let's say for example, raw gold that people can take with them into TBC when their characters progress, then you are going to have the issue of why gold and not items. It's not fair on me because I have lots of items stockpiled up and that other guy has lots of gold stockpiled up, so I have an advantage over him, so on and so forth. Where do you draw the line? If everyone starts at 0, at least it's even and fair. The cons, however, are of course going to be that it's not how it was originally, and that people aren't going to be able to keep their current characters that they have grown fond of while playing in Classic. In my opinion, this is going to be the option that has the biggest strength of pros, but also the biggest detriment of cons. It would be a very risky decision for Blizzard to go for. Personally, what I'd like to see is that if they do go for the much more likely, in my opinion, transfer of your characters onto a new realm, or have those realms transition into TBC, basically any way that you keep your current character from Classic, I would like to see them also introduce a fresh server or two, where people can get that experience going from level 1, and that is how it goes from day 1. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to put this in place, but maybe for some logistical reason they couldn't. But that is something that I think is a nice mitigating factor. But then again, I have also been an advocate of fresh servers for Classic, and going forward any other expansions that they elect to make a Classic version of, simply because that fresh experience is what a lot of people like about doing these Classic servers. And our final option is going to be the same as the previous, but starting with a level 58 character template. Now, compared to our last option, this only really has one pro, and that is that people are going to get that fresh experience, but while still being able to go directly into TBC content. A lot of people don't like the idea of redoing the classic leveling experience, as it were, in TBC before getting to experience that new content with the level 1 start. However, I would personally be against this. First of all, I don't think that the experience from 0 to 60 or 0 to 58 is going to be the same in the TBC server as it is in Classic. First of all, it's been massively reduced the amount of experience that you need to be able to get in order to get to that same level, as well as making it considerably easier to get there. Itemization has made characters stronger, new quest subs were added, and all in all, it makes for quite a different experience that isn't as daunting or time consuming, and you'll be able to get yourself into TBC fairly quickly, while also experiencing those new parts of the game that did come with TBC as well. The other big detriment for me is that starting with a character template at a high level simply just feels cheap, in my opinion. You don't have a connection with your character, you've not started it from scratch and built it up to where it is at that point, and that's something that I just really don't like. It's certainly not going to sit well with anybody on RP servers. I'm not that way inclined myself, but I do see the appeal, and they will definitely be very much opposed to it. I don't really see a massive benefit over the level 1 fresh server, apart from, of course, that people can start at that TBC content that they are desiring to play. However, I think Classic in itself is an experience that is designed to be about the journey and not simply rushing into what people want to be able to do in terms of the new shiny things. People who want new shiny flashy buttons and such probably stayed on retail. But that's going to about do it for me and my opinions on the options that we have. And now I think the only thing I'm going to do before we close off this video is simply give where I stand on the options, as well as a couple of other options that people have put forward that aren't really options that were put forward by Blizzard themselves, of which there are a couple of interesting ones. First off the bat, the big one that's being put forward by people is actually only about one word different from our first two options. Now, those first two options, you may recall on the survey, say transfer. Now, a character transfer, from anyone who's played retail and will be familiar, that this is essentially to move your character from one realm to another. I.e., if you were to move from your Classic server to your TBC server, your Classic server character would not be there anymore, it would be on the TBC realm. Now, what a lot of people are putting forward as an option is to duplicate your character, so they can get their level 60 character that they want on Classic forever, and move it onto a TBC server and play the same character there, and move that one forward as though it were just the same and the servers had progressed. Now, this, in my opinion, is actually a pretty excellent option. It does still have the massive issue of the detriment to the WoW Classic community, the vanilla experience community. However, I think it's actually doing better to mitigate that than what a lot of the other options actually have. I don't really know why Blizzard wouldn't put this forward as a suggestion. It is possible that when they said transfer in the survey, that is what they meant. Although I suppose that the flip side of that is that if you don't transfer your character, there's nothing stopping you playing Classic and doing it all over again. Although I personally think that if people are going to have to start a new character afresh to have both, they would much rather start one afresh on a TBC server. They've already done that experience and built their understanding of their character on Classic over the last year or so. They don't want to then have to rebuild the same character. They'd much rather have a new experience as opposed to just simply remaking the old one. Regardless of what Blizzard decide to do or not to do, I think the best thing that we can really put forward to them as an idea or a concept is more do's and don'ts than a full-fledged idea. And In my opinion, there's only really the one big thing that they have to do for me, and that is do not get rid of the classic level 60 servers. Now, maybe you have to consolidate them, maybe they have to evolve in some way, but you can't get rid of the classic experience that has got such a die-hard community. Personally, I'm not going to pretend to be a part of that community. I do enjoy classic, but I don't live and breathe it, whereas there are plenty of people who have done for the better part of a decade, if not two, and you can't give them what they want for a year after that wait and then just take it away. It's a terrible idea and it will get massive backlash. That being said, you can't deprive people who want to progress like it would have done naturally, so you do need to accommodate for them as well, and that is of course with the release of TBC, and probably with the ability to play their current characters in that expansion. As to what they do to work around all the other logistical issues around that, I think that there's pros and cons in whatever way they go for, and I don't envy them their decision. But I think as long as they hit those minimum requirements of not messing up what they've already made great, I think that people will eventually get past whatever decision they do elect to go for, whether they like it or dislike it, and move on simply to enjoy the game, hopefully in both of its classic and TBC classic forms. On a personal note, as controversial as this is, I am actually hoping that we get TBC servers that are requiring a level 1 start afresh. That is just my personal opinion. I love the fresh server experience. It was what I enjoyed most about Classic, and I would really enjoy being able to play that version of the game for myself along many other people who are all struggling to get up there, and it would make for a more interesting challenge and a more interesting race to get the world first as well, in my opinion, which of course in the modern day most video games are a spectator sport. That is just my opinion. Feel free to let me know yours down below, and I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider liking the video, it does help out a great deal, and if you want to be kept up to date with future videos on TBC, then do consider subscribing to the channel. But for now guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Later.